Susan is knocked down by her father John because her half-sister Betty, in cahoots with the maid, falsely accused her. Consequently, Susan is eventually driven out of the house. At this moment, she encounters Alan, who is sad and drinking in the snowy night. She picks up an umbrella and walks towards Alan, which also makes Alan fall in love with her at first sight. Susan slowly sits down, and Alan smoothly takes the umbrella from her hand. The two individuals who have lost loved ones confide in each other in the snowy night, leaning on each other and sharing a drink together. Their conversation brings their hearts closer. Overpowered by the alcohol, Susan eventually drifts off to sleep, and Alan gallantly carries her towards the car. The atmosphere inside the car gradually becomes subtle. Susan intends to touch Alan's cheek, but is interrupted by Laurie, who stops the car. Laurie is surprised by Susan's presence. Feeling unwell due to alcohol, Susan accidentally vomits on Laurie. Alan is satisfied with that and leaves. Alan tenderly takes care of the drunken Susan, comforting her as she has nightmares. The next day, Susan wakes up surprised to find herself lying in Alan's arms. As she tries to break free, Alan also wakes up. Susan notices that she has scratched Alan and gently blows on his wound to ease the pain, making Alan feel rather shy. During the meal, Susan even feeds Alan by hand. Their feelings for each other grow warmer. After the meal, Alan tends to the wound on Susan's lip, and the two decide to get married. Alan promises to always protect Susan in the future. On Susan's birthday, they obtain their marriage certificate. Alan also prepares a necklace as a gift for Susan. Susan is very touched. She tiptoes and kisses Alan on the cheek. On campus, Susan confesses to Sandy about being driven out of her home by her father, which angers Sandy. Betty maliciously taunts Susan upon seeing her, attempting to provoke her, leading to Sandy slapping Betty and sparking a dispute. At that moment, Coach Lee enters the campus with Wally. Wally, an outstanding cellist, captivates everyone with his superb skills. Surprisingly, Wally turns out to be Susan's cousin. However, Susan's mother, Vera, broke ties with her family to marry John. In Susan's absence, Betty deliberately spreads rumors in front of Wally. Although Wally doesn't completely believe Betty's words, he decides to uncover the truth. Alan returns to the bedroom, and both of them are a bit shy because it's their first night together after marriage. However, Alan respects Susan's wishes and simply holds her in his arms, asking for a goodnight kiss. Susan kisses Alan on the cheek, and their feelings continue to grow warmer. The next day, Susan wakes up in Alan's arms. Suddenly, she remembers that she forgot to prepare a birthday gift for her cousin Carl. So Alan decides to choose a gift for her. At the restaurant, Susan presents the prepared gift, which surprises Carl and Wally, making them realize that Susan's partner is not ordinary. When Carl and Wally leave, they encounter Alan, whose words make them realize that Alan is Susan's support. On the other hand, Stephen also sends someone to warn Susan to reduce contact with Carl and others. Upset, Susan sits on the side, and Alan rushes to comfort her in her distress. At that moment, she notices a wound near Alan's mouth and leans in closer. Entranced by the lovely Susan, Alan can't help but kiss her. Alan embraces Susan, warming her cold feet. Susan looks at Alan's disheveled collar, feeling a bit shy. However, Alan teases Susan, wanting her to help him fix his clothes. Seeing the shy Susan, Alan can't help but laugh. He holds Susan, who wants to leave, and kisses her. The two passionately kiss each other, and Alan carries her to the bed. After some thought, Susan willingly wraps her arms around Alan's neck and kisses him back. They spend a beautiful night together, deepening their intimacy. Alan brings Susan to his company and instructs his assistant to take Susan to his office to rest. However, on his way back, Alan sees Susan asking his assistant for advice and feels a bit jealous. Watching the earnest Susan, Alan can't help but kiss her on the cheek. Moreover, he turns Susan's chair around and kisses her. Susan and Sandy are shopping together when Sandy is shocked to hear the news of Susan's marriage. To their surprise, they turn around and meet Betty and Mary. They speak rudely, mocking Susan for her poverty. However, since this mall is owned by Alan, Susan and Sandy decide to teach Betty a lesson. The salesperson recognizes the necklace around Susan's neck and also receives instructions from Alan's assistant to treat Susan well. Betty makes a bet with Susan to see who spends more money. Betty picks out an exquisite ring, intending to collude with the salesperson to bully Susan. However, when Sandy is about to make the payment, they unexpectedly find out that Susan's necklace entitles her to lifelong free shopping at this store. Betty is very unhappy and tries to snatch the necklace but ends up being driven away by Sandy. When Susan gets back home, she finds Alan smoking. Concerned for Alan's health, Susan hopes that Alan will quit smoking. Touched by Susan's care, Alan agrees to Susan's request and kisses her. Alan is preparing to go back to celebrate his grandfather, Porter's birthday. He can't help but recall the past when his father, Harrison, and stepmother, Martha, did wrong by blaming his mother, Linda, for their actions that led to her death. The group, including Laurie, is pleased to see Alan, but he doesn't want to engage with them. Grandfather Porter is especially happy that Alan has returned, but Harrison is very displeased. Since the accident years ago that left Harrison severely disabled, he has harbored resentment towards Alan. Martha pretends to offer advice, but actually worsens the situation. However, Alan doesn't take their words to heart, mocks them, and then leaves. Alan's housekeeper mentions to Porter about Alan being married, which makes Porter very happy. However, this news is overheard by the jealous Laurie. Suddenly, she hears Alan's phone ringing, deliberately answers a call from Susan, and provokes Susan with ambiguous words. By the time Alan discovers this, it's already too late. Susan feels very upset because of Laurie's words. However, Alan, showing his concern for Susan, hurries back and finds Susan, who is out trying to clear her mind. Alan notices Susan's sadness and opens up to her about his relationship with Laurie, explaining the situation. Alan also explains his family. It turns out that years ago, it was Harrison's reckless behavior that caused the accident by running a red light, resulting in Linda's death. However, Harrison blamed Linda for the mistake, which is why Alan dislikes him. Susan feels very sad about Alan's tragic childhood and comforts him with a kiss. Also, Laurie is still persistent and asks her agent to investigate Susan's identity. Susan changes into a pure white long dress, getting ready to participate in the competition. Seeing the beautiful Susan, Alan is very surprised and kisses her cheek. Walton and Carl also arrive at the venue, with Carl there to support Susan. Betty overhears Carl's remarks backstage, feeling extremely jealous of Susan. She falsely claims to be Carl's cousin, leading others to misunderstand and praise her. Susan is very disdainful of this and quietly tells Sandy the truth, which surprises Sandy greatly. Susan shines on stage, her outstanding piano skills earning recognition and applause from the audience. Without a doubt, Susan secures the first place in the competition. Furthermore, Carl and Wally step onto the stage to present flowers to Susan. This exposes Betty's true identity, and she angrily flees the scene in embarrassment. Walton approaches Susan, intending to strike up a conversation and sign her into his entertainment company. To his surprise, she turns out to be his brother Alan's wife, leaving Walton feeling embarrassed. Alan is extremely proud of Susan's award, joyfully kissing her. Susan confesses her relationships with Wally and Carl, only to discover that Alan already knew. At that moment, Susan realizes that Alan has long accepted them. Alan has silently sacrificed a lot for their love, which deeply moves Susan, prompting her to embrace Alan tightly as he gently kisses away her tears. Meanwhile, Stephen, upon learning of Carl and their connection to Susan, is very angry. He still harbors resentment towards Susan's mother in his heart. Betty watches Susan shine in the online news, feeling extremely jealous, determined to become a female star and overshadow Susan. She decides to step into the limelight. Coincidentally, Lori calls her, inviting her to act in a movie. The two quickly agree to the opportunity. Alan feels a bit jealous of Susan's recent popularity. Seeing him jealous, Susan can't help but laugh, calmingly kissing his cheek. Unexpectedly, Carl suddenly arrives at Alan's office, causing Susan to quickly hide under the desk out of guilt. It turns out that Stephen is furious after learning about Susan being kicked out by John and bullied by Betty, despite his anger towards Vera for insisting on marrying John back then. Susan will always be his granddaughter. Therefore, he instructs Carl to bring Susan home for dinner the next day, which is also the reason he came to see Alan. When Susan learns about this, she is deeply moved and tears up, finally receiving Stephen's approval. Alan and Susan return home, only to find Potter has arrived. Potter is particularly pleased with Susan as his granddaughter-in-law and presents her with a family heirloom bracelet worn by the wife, symbolizing the heir, expressing his appreciation for Susan. This gesture leaves Susan pleasantly surprised and honored. Susan is very excited about the upcoming meeting and carefully selects her outfit for the banquet. Alan, looking at the lovely Susan, can't help but hug her and give her a kiss. Stephen, upon hearing the news of Susan marrying Alan, feels a bit emotional and worried that Susan might follow in Vera's footsteps. Stephen looks at Susan, who bears a resemblance to Vera, and feels deeply moved. He regrets his stubbornness greatly. Stephen is concerned about Alan's intentions toward Susan, so he decides to have a private conversation with Alan. Alan's sincere words and genuine emotions touch Stephen, eventually earning Stephen's approval. Upon returning home, Alan is surprised to find Hunter at his house. Hunter had learned about Alan's marriage and was greatly shocked, wanting to catch a glimpse of Susan's beauty. Alan, determined to quit smoking and drinking for Susan's sake, surprises Hunter greatly. After lunch, Alan receives a call from Susan. In order to see her, he lies that he hasn't had lunch yet. On the other hand, Lori informs Martha about Susan and Alan's situation. The two decide to team up and drive Susan away. Susan brings a heartwarming packed lunch for Alan and lovingly feeds him. The office is filled with happiness and sweetness between the two. Upon returning home, Alan looks curiously at the table filled with packages, ready to open them. Susan quickly intervenes and takes away the packages. It turns out that these packages are surprises prepared by Susan for Alan. Back in the room, Susan then presents Alan with a beautiful necklace. Touched by everything Susan has prepared, Alan kisses his beloved partner. While walking on the road, Walton collides with Sandy and accidentally swaps phones. When Walton realizes this, Sandy is already far away. Back at home, Martha encourages Walton to compete with Alan for the position of company leader, but Walton is not interested in that. Suddenly, he receives a call from Susan. He explains the phone mix-up with Sandy and asks Susan to help contact Sandy. At that moment, Alan approaches, prompting Walton to quickly end the call, which makes Susan laugh. Alan has prepared a surprise for Susan. Nowadays, the wine cellar has been transformed into Susan's music room by Alan. With Susan's presence, Alan no longer feels lonely and he no longer needs to drown his sorrows in alcohol. Walton and Sandy have arranged a time and place to exchange phones, but Walton has come up with a prank instead. On this day, Walton finds Sandy with a bouquet of flowers. He declares ambiguously that Sandy is his partner, causing onlookers to misunderstand their relationship. Sandy is bewildered, trying to snatch back the phone when Walton seizes the opportunity to hug her waist, making Sandy very shy, and she quickly flees. Sandy and Susan encounter two thugs on the street with ill intentions, aiming to harm them. In this critical moment, Walton happens to pass by and drives away the two thugs by smashing a bottle at them. Witnessing Walton's bravery, Sandy is somewhat surprised and starts to view Walton differently. The failure of the plan disappoints Betty, as it turns out that she arranged for the two thugs. Back at home, Susan is still shaken and calls Alan. Sensing Susan's mood, Alan instructs his assistant to arrange an immediate return home. The next day, Susan wakes up to find Alan unexpectedly back, greatly surprised. Alan embraces Susan, expressing his worries and resolving to seek revenge against those who bullied Susan. To thank Walton, Susan decides to treat him to a meal, which leads to a thaw in the relationship between Alan and Walton. Over the years, Walton has harbored resentment towards his meddling mother, so he is cautious around Alan. However, Alan understands Walton's intentions and has never directed his anger towards him. Susan also shares her feelings with Alan. Seeing Susan's insecurity, Alan not only encourages her, but also reveals the shocking truth that John is not Susan's biological father, leaving her deeply astonished. From the evidence Susan has gathered from Alan, she discovers that Vera once had a pen pal with whom she shared feelings through letters, but suddenly married John. This revelation surprises them both, and they are determined to uncover the truth from that time. As the competition nears, Alan seeks out Susan, and the two happily snuggle together. Alan also takes the opportunity to kiss Susan, giving her encouragement and love. On the other hand, Betty, after entering the entertainment industry, has to sleep with others for opportunities, which increases her resentment towards Susan. Susan has achieved excellent results, while Sandy did not make it to the top 5. She is upset and drinks with Walton. Under the influence of alcohol, the heartbroken Sandy hugs Walton. Walton takes the opportunity to confess his feelings for Sandy, and they eventually become a couple. To celebrate Susan's outstanding performance, Alan decides to transfer all his assets to Susan's name. Susan initially hesitates to accept Alan's wealth, but Alan pretends to be pitiful. Alan reveals his true intentions, which deeply moves Susan, and she eventually agrees. The two embrace happily together. On this day, Susan is on her way to Alan's company when she accidentally collides with another car. Susan gets out and apologizes to Kevin. Surprised by the young Susan, Kevin invites her to a nearby cafe. Alan rushes over at this moment. During their conversation, Alan realizes that Kevin might be Susan's biological father and comes up with an excuse for Susan to leave first. As expected, the conversation between Alan and Kevin gradually reveals the truth. Susan also becomes aware of Kevin's identity. It turns out that years ago, Kevin asked John to help mail a letter while he was away. However, John impersonated Kevin and met with Vera. Luckily, Kevin arrived in time, rescued the drugged Vera, and had a one-night stand with her, resulting in Susan's birth. The next day, Kevin intended to buy breakfast for Vera, but got into a car accident, fell into a year-long coma, giving John an opportunity to wrongfully marry Vera. Susan's real identity turns out to be the child of Vera and Kevin. Upon learning the truth, Susan is deeply saddened and her resentment towards John grows. Alan comforts Susan as she feels upset. After twists and turns, Susan and Kevin, this father-daughter pair, finally recognize each other and both are very happy. On the other side, Stephen also learns the truth from the past and is very angry. He decides to teach John a lesson and seek revenge. Facing the consequences of his actions, John deeply regrets and calls Susan to ask for forgiveness. Alan takes the phone, scolds John, and John eventually reaps what he sowed. In the music room, Susan feels very happy thinking about all the love she has received. She expresses her gratitude and joy to Alan, who gently kisses her lips. Alan finds Betty and hopes she can help testify in court to bring John to justice, promising to transfer the company under John's name to Betty's name. Upon learning this, Mary angrily slaps Betty. However, Betty is already completely disappointed in Mary. Over the years, Betty has been forced by Mary to compete with Susan, but she was also forced to sleep with others, with Mary showing no concern. Betty eventually leaves in disappointment. Betty seeks out Susan, feeling remorseful for her past wrongdoings, and earns Susan's forgiveness. Betty returns the gifts she had taken from Susan, and before leaving, warns her to be careful with Laurie. On the other hand, Martha still tries to force Walton and Sandy to break up. Seeing Sandy's despair, Walton calls Martha to express his firm stance on Sandy, which deeply moves her. As the new year approaches, joy radiates from everyone's faces. In the countdown to the new year, Susan and Alan express their love for each other and happily kiss. On this day, they are about to set off to pay respects to Alan's mother. Reflecting on this, Susan feels that Alan has always protected her, yet she hasn't been able to do much for Alan in return. However, in Alan's heart, Susan is a ray of light in his world, giving him endless encouragement and strength. Touched by this, Susan kisses Alan's cheek. After the worship is over, the two reminisce about the day they met near the cemetery. Despite their tumultuous childhoods, it is these experiences that brought them together, helping them meet, fall in love, and embrace each other happily. On this day, Susan is waiting for Alan to pick her up. Unexpectedly, Laurie is also nearby. At this moment, Laurie's eyes are clouded with jealousy, and she angrily drives her car towards Susan. Fortunately, Susan is only slightly injured and not in danger. However, this angers Alan, and he decides to retaliate against Laurie. After this incident, Alan also understands the importance of companionship. He decides to hand over the group to Walton and accompany Susan to further her piano skills. Susan and Alan's first wedding anniversary has arrived, and he has prepared a surprise for her. The scattered flower petals represent Alan's thoughtfulness and love. Alan expresses his love for Susan and promises to always be by her side. Susan is deeply moved. She embraces Alan tightly and kisses her beloved. However, the surprise doesn't end there. Alan goes down on one knee to make up for the regret of not proposing to Susan back then. After years of training and hard work, Susan is finally able to participate in a world-class cello competition. With her outstanding performance, she also achieves her dream of becoming a champion. Fulfilled with her accomplishment, Susan joyfully rushes into Alan's arms. In the end, after enduring numerous challenges, their dreams come true, and the two happily embrace and kiss each other,